Shut up, Wesley. Shut up, Wesley.
Yeah, Solly, I saw Curtis put out a segment talking about how the Labour Party were begging the fleas. They're begging the fleas to return. Oh no, we've lost all the fleas. We've shaken off too many fleas, and now we can't win elections. No, we were told. Yeah, exactly. Like, I thought the door was open and we could leave, Keith. I thought the door was open. Oh, they've all the fleas have left, and now they're desperate for the fleas back. Oh no, give me the fleas, please, give me the fleas. It's what they're like at the moment over at Labour HQ. And you know what? It's really fucking funny. It's extremely funny. And the Labour Party have realised that you actually can't govern on vibes alone. You can't govern on sensible centrism. You actually have to do things that the public want. And the public don't want digital ID, and they don't want cuts to welfare. Friend called me about that today. They joined the Greens. Excellent. Honestly, the Labour Party begging new Green Party members to come back to them after they deliberately told them to fuck off and go away forever. I'm literally in a public televised news conference. They said, please leave and never come back. And now they're just desperate. They're desperate for the fleas. I mean, it has been funny talking about the Labour Party's rancid vibes, right? Like, again, I think a bunch of other people have going to be putting out segments about this, so I'm not going to put it as a segment, but we can just chat about it. My mouse said it's not recognised. That'd be unhelpful if so. There we go. Been onboarding new members for weeks now. It's mad hard to step back. Had to step back, but that's fair enough. I'm assuming that lots of the meeting places that Green parties have previously had for their local constituency parties have immediately become too small because for all the new members. But yeah, the Labour Party's vibes are rancid, and it is so fucking funny. We had Wes Streeting, Anna Sawa, Lucy Powell, all go on about how, oh, look at Mamdani, what an incredible victory. What an incredible victory. And, like, what the guy who thinks that the state can do good things and provide them free at the point of use rather than, like, put them through 1,000 layers of means testing to be able to get there. And the guy who stands with the transgender community, the guy who is, like, so anti-Israel that it became, like, central to the attacks against him in the campaign, who phone banked with Jeremy Corbyn, the guy who got kicked out of the Labour Party for being too left-wing, and seeing Labour politicians who were on the wing of the party who expelled people for having the same opinions on Israel as Mamdani. In fact, Mamdani's opinions on Israel that it shouldn't exist as a state which is, like, Jewish specifically, it should be a state with equal rights, is essentially one state solution in terms of his positioning. And they're out here praising him as if they're part of the same political coalition. As if they're part of the same ideological group. No, that's not you. Stay out of your fucking lane, Wesley. I mean, it is true, Solly. Ramadouaji is both incredibly beautiful and very talented. We are on YouTube, Randomo. We are on YouTube. We do have a way of being able to put things up on the agenda and a prioritization ballot pre-conference, Dr. Gamer J. Well, I just think we need a big Green Party Discord server because there needs to be a Discord server for everything. Because I am it's just better than WhatsApp. There is an unofficial Greens organized Discord server, but needs more people in it. I agree. I think we should modernize, and I think you offer some good points there, Dr. Gamer J. Watched a vid of Secular Talk showing how butthurt the right are over the Mamdani win. It is true. You know what? Where people like Wes Streeting and Anna Sawa glazing Mamdani as if they're part of the same team is one level of cringe, But it's even more cringe that Bridget Phillipson was on Sky News this morning, going saying, well, I don't really pay attention to American politics. Bitch, we know you pay attention. Everyone from the Labour right, everyone from the Fabian Society wishes that they were the people fucking briefcasing all over the place in the West Wing. I'm like, I'm sorry. No one believes you when you say this, Bridget. And that's one of the many reasons, one of the multitudes of reasons outside of shitty policy, that the Labour Party is hated so much. That they're just they're just so obviously insincere about everything that they believe. That no one believes a word any of the Labour right politicians say, because fundamentally they've all taken their political positions from wanting to look like people in the West Wing, of basing their politics on looking sensible rather than being having good policy or efficacious policy. I mean, literally, just fucking Jonathan Ashworth took a contingent of Labour people over to campaign for the Democratic Party in the swing states, which I think is even funnier that they did that. So, Jonathan Ashworth losing the Labour Party in Leicester South, watching Labour Together tank under his leadership, and then going and destroying the Democratic Party's election campaign. Honestly, what turnout for the books for Mr. Ashworth? A perpetual L taker. I mean, I will say, Eric the Red, I'm not sure about that, but the polling where Kamala Harris was significantly ahead that then narrowed at the end, it started narrowing as soon as Jonathan Ashworth went to campaign for her. I'm not saying that the correlation is necessarily causation, but, you know, the right are livid at Mamdani winning. It is good to see people go, oh, New York is going to collapse under communism, because they've implemented, like, some social democratic reforms. Yeah, that was always going to be the problem for Minsky. I mean, the Democrat social media accounts have actually been very pro-Zoran from the moment he kind of won the nomination. It is really interesting, again, that the Democratic Party people who run their socials are a bunch of, again, people in their mid-30s who do social media for a living. They, A, know what's popular, so know what to post so that it gets traction, and B, are part of the Zoran coalition anyway. The people in the Democratic Party who are really anti-Zoran are, first of all, people who are bought out by moneyed interests, like the Buttigieg's of this world, or they're just fucking right-wingers, like Chuck Schumer. Isn't Cuomo a Dem? Well, that's the thing, right, is that you look at the Jacob Frey beating Omar Fateh, and you would think that that was a really poor loss for Omar Fateh, when you realise that both Fateh and Mamdani were taking on the Democrats and the Republicans. Like, the Democrats are not a democratic socialist party, so people like Fateh, people like Mamdani are really fighting into a real brick wall when it comes to being able to be successful internally. The fact that Omar Fateh got 44% in that election when it was against, like, liberal Democrats and the Republicans who would have preferenced Jacob Frey higher, and to still come out only a few points behind, is really good going. And the fact that Mamdani took on the Republican Party and the Democratic Party twice and won both times shows you just how much of a kind of force majeure that Mamdani is showing. Because you gotta, like, when you look at, like, Cuomo's policy positions when he was governor, like, none of that's far away from the Democratic Party's brand for quite a while. Like, not exactly particularly far away from the mainstream of the Democratic Party. He didn't govern like a Republican, even if he did make deals with Republicans, but liberal Democrats have always made deals with Republicans specifically because they wanted to keep the left out. Cuomo did that just like other liberal Democrats would do. So I think it's perfectly reasonable to say that Mamdani took on the whole of the Republican and Democratic Party establishments and beat them both. Katie Wilson fight isn't over, I don't believe. I think that there's still a bunch of preferences to count for Katie Wilson. Yeah, there's a bunch of uncounted ballots and preference vote. Oh, late ballots, right? That's it. This is first past the post for Bruce Harrell is showing 43.32. Election night tabulation only affects about turnout of about 23.36%. This is akin to only a large fraction of precincts reporting in a traditional sitting with polling places with the results incomplete. There's a 7-point lead at the moment, but there's a very good chance he'll end up losing. Seattle elections show that the late trends go further left. So there is still a shift that could happen with Katie Wilson. But Omar Fateh has definitely lost. There's a GenSec election happening in Unity. Yeah, outvoting Andrea Egan. Owen Jones has done good content about that. She's pledging to cut funding to Labour and disaffiliate from them, so I'm voting for her. Christina McInerney talks big game, but then does what Morgan McSweeney tells her to do. She's a traitor. I mean, she's just a melt, right? I wouldn't call Christina McInerney a traitor because she talks good in terms of policy for her own constituents, but she is definitely not left-wing enough. And I would absolutely support Andrea Egan in beating her. And likewise, I think that Sharon Graham needs to talk tougher game on Labour, but there's plenty of wiggle room there. But you're right. I think that it's not unreasonable that we could see both Unite and Unison disaffiliate in the near future, assuming their members are on board with it, of course. But a victory for Andrea Egan, specifically running on a platform of disaffiliation, would be that would be a real kind of mandate for that to happen. I think literally the only Labour MP I would like to see defect to the Greens is Nadia Whittome. I don't think any of them can really justify being part of our party given what they've supported, but Nadia Whittome has been pretty steadfast in her positions in opposing the Central Committee and the McSweeney Politburo, right? So I would definitely want to have Nadia Whittome, but very precious few others. Neil Duncan Jordan, maybe? I mean, I'd like him to, but there's no chance they will. There's absolutely no chance. First of all, Duncan Jordan is definitely getting the whip back. And B, what's the fucking point? What's the fucking point in getting a Green MP in Poole, of all places, when that's going to be Reform Heartland in 4 years' time? Clive Lewis, I mean... Again, Clive Lewis has been asked loads of times about moving to the Green Party, and he said no every single time. Like, at this point, he's too committed to Labour for me to care about it, you know? I think the other MP that I would consider would be Abtesam Mohammed, but you would expect that if there was someone like Abtesam Mohammed defecting to the Greens, it's because she knows that she'd lose her seat to the Greens, so it would look cynical. Even if I do think that her policy positions on Israel and trans people, etc., are far more in tune with the Green Party than the Labour Party. I didn't realise that, but John, definitely something bad. I think Apsana would be better moving to your party. I think, yeah, the one I really, the one I'm desperate to join the Greens, I really want Faisal Shaheen to join. I mean, I'm not surprised that Labour has gone behind Conservatives because all of their voters are moving to the Greens. Well, Jamie Driscoll's an independent now, but yeah, I'd love to see Jamie Driscoll join the Greens too. Oh, I'm just memeing. I'm memeing and creaming Pepsi. Thank you, Jack, for the thank you, the Jack Miller, for the £5. Someone actually bubble wraps Zohan. He's been 58 days until he's actually sworn in, and I feel anything could happen. I mean, that is true. Given the fucking insane coverage, you'd think that there might be some extremist who wants to do something terrible. Although, speaking of extremists who might want to do things that are terrible, was it the Attorney General in Virginia? Yeah, there was an Attorney General election in Virginia. Thank you for the 10 gifties, Jack, much appreciated. There was an Attorney General election in Virginia, and the candidate, a guy called Shay Jones, Sent a bunch of text messages essentially saying that he wanted Republicans to die, and then he fucking won. It's incredible. Just, honestly, what an absolute meme candidate. Gilbert gets 2 bullets to the head. Jones later called the person to continue their conversation, where he invoked the death of Gilbert's children and said it might cause the then speaker to change his political views. Which obviously I avow, but it's incredibly funny. Just as funny as Rupert Lowe having his fucking headlights stolen, as having his headlights stolen in London. Oh yeah, like Randy Fine is just like literally the fucking gutter trash of America. Based on something, exactly. Based on something. We don't know. 7% of those who answered this disqualifies him as a candidate then voted for him. Incredible scenes. Absolutely incredible scenes. Absolute cinema. Oh, it's true. Comedy's been legalized. Do you think there's any possibility that Reform don't win in 2029? Yeah, I think so. I mean, the economy could turn around. The left could build a broad coalition. Nigel Farage could say that he wants to strangle Asians. I don't know. Like, there are loads of things that could potentially happen that would lead to Reform not winning the election. It's not a foregone conclusion. One thing, I think one party that I think is not going to win the election outright is going to be the Labour Party. I think that the biggest potential, I think that the thing that I'm actually, there's two. I don't think the Labour Party will win. I think that they'll maybe be part of a coalition government after the election. I think that's something that's a potential or a confidence supply arrangement. I think likewise is true of Reform. They will most likely win, but could also be part of a supply and confidence agreement. The single party that will definitely not be winning is the Conservative Party. There is absolutely zero chance of the Conservative Party winning the next election. There's zero chance of the Conservative Party being a competitive political party in 2029 at the next election. That's just not going to happen. I mean, that is the problem with Reform. They are a single issue party. And if people feel like that the economy is in jeopardy, they won't want to back a party that, backs Liz Truss, essentially. So that's where I think Reform will lose a lot of votes, and that natural Conservatives will not like their approach to the economy, essentially. I've said before, 7-7, I think the Tories will get fewer seats than Plaid Cymru at the next election. The question is, how many parties will we have at the next election? Like, how many ways will the vote be split? Will Advance UK be running candidates? Will your party be running? Will the Workers' Party be running candidates? Will the Climate Party be running candidates? Will there be an SDP? Will they be running? It'll be really funny to just see like all the kind of the morass of different special interest parties that will try and run under first past the post. A Green Plaid merger. I hope the Green Party and Plaid at least come to some sort of agreement with how they run candidates, given they're both running on a progressive independence ticket. Thank you, Vusmus, for the gifted sub. Thank you, Mad Mark, for the resub, and thank you, Triple PD, for the resub. Appreciate you all. You will not get me. You will not get me to run for Parliament, chat. You will not. It won't happen. It won't happen. We watched the video on stream, Brody. Important thing, Vicky, is Zia is his second name. His full name is Mohammed Ziauddin Yusuf. So technically he's not if you put his whole name in context, it's not a Z, or Z, sorry. It's not a Z, even if you would use, even if the name that he would actually use starts with a Z. I like Klanos Mehdi, as far as Plague members go. I mean, I agree that your party probably seems like a waste of time now, but thanks for shouting out the Dead Domain video yesterday. I gave that watch, and its 2-part was fantastic. He was fantastic and was very funny. I think a Green Labour coalition is definitely on the cards. There was a really important point that Zach Polanski made, which in a clip that we'll probably watch later, which was that I don't think there's any chance of the Green Party going into coalition with a Labour Party led by Keir Starmer. The obvious position here is that Labour Party won't be led by Keir Starmer at the next election. So maybe there'll be a Polanski-Burnham front or something like that. But my assumption would be probably more likely as confidence and supply and minority rather than official coalition, you know? I mean, that's what I've heard as well, Brody. But like Adnan Hussein to start, Mad Mart. Not Corbyn, no. They have indeed, Specs been. It's been good to see. They've let in Alba Party councillors. They have indeed, yeah. The question is, should we watch 3 hours of a Transport Select Committee? I guess only an hour of the Transport Select Committee, because it's got Eddie Dempsey in it. I mean, the support for multiculturalism and diversity is still a plurality opinion, NWA. It was funny that the Telegraph posted a The Telegraph posted an article saying, under half the country support the idea of diversity and multiculturalism. And I was like, yeah, 48% supported and like 20% opposed. Like, it was all massively popular. I'm like, shocked at Adam. I mean, at least he's not Jonathan Ashworth, yeah. Well, again, that's the thing, YouTube enjoyer, is that with Keir Starmer at the top of the Labour Party, the chance of a Green coalition with the Labour Party, if there was a hung Parliament, would be zero, because no one in the Green Party would want to work with Starmer, and Morgan McSweeney would rule out any kind of deal with the Greens. Like, under Morgan McSweeney, Labour would more likely have a grand coalition with the Tories than they would with the Greens. Question time's tomorrow, Mad Mart. Wonder if they've put out what the panelists are going to be tomorrow. They have. Tomorrow it's in Sunderland, and you've got Anna Turley, Graham Stewart, Paul Novak, and Tim Stanley. I guess it's fine. I like Paul Novak, but why have they only got 4 people again? Like, when polls have Reform and the Greens as the top 2 party, or at least some polls do, find out now, to have question times where Reform and the Green Party do not get representation seems silly to me. Will be the next defection to Reform? I don't know, actually. That's a good question. I mean, Anna Turley is genuinely awful. When was the last time a Green MP was on there? Been ages. The last one was Ellie Chowns, I think, quite a while back. But there was a Green representative, and we had Zach Polanski on a few weeks ago. But we very rarely actually have Green MPs on, or Green MPs on, or Green representatives at all on Question Time. I mean, no, Paul Novak is a real fucking Labourite, which is very tedious. For what it's worth, Fusmus, whilst I agree that Tim Stanley's incredibly posh voice is insufferable, in terms of his political opinions, he seems a bit more normal than a bunch of other Tories, you know? Not as quickly, Dr. Gamer J, no. It is true, Ben. It is true to see that it's crazy to watch them die so quickly, but again, they incubated the economic system that's created this mess and have no solutions to be able to undo the mess that they caused, right? So, of course, it stands to reason that they would end up being undermined. Well, yeah, because Mark is married to Ruth Savotka, who's like one of the biggest TERFs in the country. Waiting for Mike Tapp's defection? That'd be fucking funny, wouldn't it? That's quite weird, Dingus. It's quite weird. Also, one of these there's an interesting clip here from the Sky News Politics Hub today about Mamdani. Let's have a watch. Oh. There we go. I'd love to get Moth and Ali on Question Time. And or Rachel, yeah. PMQs was weird. We'll watch it in a bit. We'll probably watch PMQs at the end when people start going to sleep, because that's the less interesting bit, other than the Islamo transgender Marxist caliphate of New York City. And it's true, Darius. I mean, I'm just saying, if you're a Green Party person who gets in contact for who we should send on a panel, I'm always open for it.
Terribly complicated. And in that sense, that is something that can be learned, I suppose.
On mouse work, there we go.
I don't know. I think he clearly caught the imagination of lots of people. I was watching an interview somebody did last night, and they'd voted for Trump last year, and they voted for Mamdani yesterday.
Wow,
now, that is quite a shift.
That is quite a swing.
And I suspect that's partly because they just want to shake the system up. And so I think if there are a number of voters, and I think we do have to watch for that in the UK, who are sort of, in a way, I don't mind who I vote for. I just want to send a signal to the establishment, to Westminster, to Parliament, that I want to shake up, I want things to change. And so the fascinating thing, of course, will be, as we know, it's easy to make the promises on the campaign trail. Actually, is he now going to be able to deliver, particularly given he's got a president who
will do his damn hardest not to make it happen? But just very fun.
What's really important to understand is people in our permanent political class are constantly trying to move away from literally anything other than talking about policy, right? Nicky Morgan needs to do a school check on that one. Who grew up in Kingston upon Thames, went to a private school, and then went to Oxbridge, can't put the fingers on what it actually was about both the Trump campaign and the Mamdani campaign that won people over. Other than, oh well, they're just your anti-establishment, and the only reason anyone can ever have for voting against the sensible centrist options of the permanent political class is if they just want to choose destruction and they just want to watch the world burn. That is essentially the position that she's come to here as to why people would vote for Mamdani or Trump. The reality is, the reason why that you see a lot of Trump Mamdani voters is because the central message of both campaigns was about the cost of living crisis. That was the central message of both of their campaigns. Whereas a lot of Trump's messaging was, there's a cost of living crisis and it's the Democrats' fault. Joe Biden was in charge when the grocery prices went up, when inflation was bad. They are the ones who didn't drill baby drill, which meant that the petrol was more expensive, or they have not done enough for farmers, so eggs are more expensive. Like the egg prices was a real kind of big meme during the US election. So there wasn't really a solution in terms of policy from Trump other than just doing tariffs that makes things more expensive anyway. But at least the central mission was, you shouldn't vote Democrat, you should vote for change, because we understand that the cost of living is bad, and we're going to fight to be able to bring that cost of living down, even if he didn't actually have any policy prescriptions at trying to fix that. It was an especially easy way for the Trump campaign to be able to message towards the country that they would be the ones that would fix the problems of Biden's economic policy. Even though actually, in reality, Biden's economic policy gave them the best recovery from the inflationary crisis because of their stimulus program that put into the supply side. But I digress. He was in charge when the inflation happened, so people blamed him for the inflation, and Trump found it very easy to win people over by just saying that you have to vote against the people who did the bad thing, or who were in charge when the bad thing happened. Conversely, those same voters, again, who Zoran spoke to on the street, he literally did, one of his very first videos was a piece that he did on social media where he talked to regular members of the public on the streets of New York and asked them, what did you feel about the election? Why did you vote for Trump? And they kept saying they had lost trust of the political class, the cost of living was too high, and they couldn't afford to live in New York City anymore, and so they wanted to vote for change, having been failed, in their mind, by the Democratic Party more broadly. And what Zoran did was notice this, campaign on the same issues as Trump. He even alluded to this during his own campaign too, and saying, well, the things that we don't share much, me and Trump, but we both talked about lowering the cost of living, so I'll work with him on these things if he wants to, even though the difference here is that whilst Trump only ran a negative campaign upon the Democrats being bad because cost of living rose under them because of the broader inflationary crisis happening during the pandemic and the war in Ukraine, Zoran's response was to offer policy solutions. So he won so many Trump voters. Mamdani won a plus 40 margin with men under 30. This big group that swung very heavily for Trump at the last election, the last general election, then swung massively back for Mamdani. And it's not just charismatic leadership that moved people over. It's not just the fact that he made good vertical social media videos that people found inspiring that won people over. It was fundamentally the policies. That's the thing. I mean, Zach makes a really good point about it being about the policies rather than about the communication style, even if the communication style helped. When talking with Sophie Ridge and Wilfred Frost on their new Sky News podcast thing they have every morning, people focus on communications too much. It was about a policy to fix a real tangible issue that the Democrats had abandoned because in the minds of the public, they thought that the corporate price gouging was their fault because they didn't do enough against it. And even though Kamala Harris wanted to sort of have a problem against price gouging at the election, when she was asked if she would change anything from the Biden era on The View, she couldn't think of anything. Not, we should have continued healthcare subsidies. We should have continued the expanded child tax credit. We should have done all of these things in terms of Medicare funding that all expired in 2023 and they never re-upped despite having the power to do so. They could have overruled the Senate parliamentarian to have a better federal minimum wage. They could have done so many things that they didn't do to be able to deal with the cost of living crisis, and Kamala Harris couldn't pick these things up to be able to break away from the administration that people had felt had failed them on economic policy, that Trump then won those voters over by promising to lower the cost of living. What did Mamdani do? He offered actual policy solutions that solved those issues, and those people moved right back. They moved right back. But that's the problem. If you're a privately educated Conservative Party grandee who went to Oxbridge, who's been born with a silver spoon in your mouth the entire time. You've spent your entire career as a member of the permanent political class, as somebody who's been able to essentially glide through life on a cloud of your own permanent self-satisfaction. You can never ever empathize with regular people on the street who are telling you their concerns of the cost of living crisis. It's the same in the United States as it is in the United Kingdom in terms of what people say is the problem, and it's the economy and it's the cost of living. And so when they hear somebody who has what she thinks are outlandish socialist nonsense policies, which she is so ideologically negatively polarized against, she can't even understand how those things might appeal to voters. And so the further she can go down that rabbit hole is essentially to say, well, the only reason that he won is because the Trump voters who wanted to smash the system before want to smash the system again. And I don't doubt that there is anti-establishment feeling amongst those voters. The same is true of Reform and Green voters. Both of them share a similar level of disdain for the establishment when it comes to politics. But the reason for this is because of the failure of policy. It's because of the failure of the political establishment. Like, people don't want to smash the system, quote unquote, and send a message to the establishment if the establishment doesn't fail them. And the Democrats and the Republicans have failed regular Americans in the same way that the Tories and the Labour Party have failed regular Brits in terms of the cost of living crisis. It's just a perfectly put microcosm of everything that sucks about our permanent political class, and what sucks about the discourse around Mamdani, that nobody recognises this. And this is why I think that there is still higher that Zach Polanski can go. It's why I think that there is still a higher ceiling for Zach Polanski and the Green Party to be able to get to new heights for, because we just need to offer policies that deal with people's material concerns on cost of living, on inequality, and on the state of public services. And if we deliver that, if we can create that message and have those policies and get them to have cut through with the electorate, the sky really is the limit. The sky really is the limit. Those people don't understand cost of living because their incomes outperform the hidden rate of inflation. Exactly, very true. Thank you, Nadia, for the €5. Kluckners, Puff Europas, Anti-SW Tribe, ominously foreshadows anti-trans hate. Shinebam got groped. I've not heard Galloway talk class or site marks. I mean, Galloway's a grifter is the problem. You know, he's just a grifter. And that is also true, Vicky. Yeah, she was told by the administration not to undermine Joe Biden's legacy, even though that would have harmed them getting re-elected. I thought she said Angela Rayner was the closest example of Zoran. But if she said Wes Streeting, I wouldn't be surprised either, because Sheila Fogarty is a fucking monster. Just a right-wing, bigoted freak. Honestly, I'd rather listen to Nick Ferrari, because at least Nick Ferrari is just a bit funny, where Sheila Fogarty's just rancid. What do you think Labour are going to do in this budget? Like, surely they can't do any more cuts and increase to income tax. It's a death nail to any chance of Labour doing anything during 2029. I mean, I think they'll have to raise taxes. I think they'll be forced into doing it. I mean, probably because he's not an MP, Raboozle, because I mean, it was the thing I said, it was one of the things I pointed out during the leadership election for the Green Party, that with Zach Polanski not being an MP, he's going to be able to spend all his time campaigning. And that's one of the big selling points. We have a really strong campaigning force, because we have MPs doing the jobs of MPs, and campaigners doing the jobs for campaigners. Like, that's as simple as that, really. We don't, unlike the Labour Party, who have lots of MPs, whose leaders can spend time being leaders because their MPs' jobs are mostly kind of fulfilled by other people and they have the funds to do so. We don't have that luxury in the Green Party. We have 4 MPs. One of our 4 MPs being a leader and doing leader stuff is 25% of our MPs stop from doing MPs things, and Zach not being an MP and so having plenty of time spare to do campaigning on a national level has been a real boon for us in being able to put the content out. That's a good idea, Mad Cat. Although I looked when you said Rancid, Scale, and Talking Heads, I was like, well, Rancid and Talking Heads, the bands? I'm like, oh no, I see what you mean. But it's weird that you capitalised it. I think I'll put a penny on income tax, maybe on the higher rate, but not the additional rate. That's very true, Set the Shallow, yeah. Again, if they just had a policy platform of doing it from the start, we'd not be in this mess, but that's student politics, having promises that you then keep. Sean Hannity was literally in tears about Mamdani on Fox News earlier. What's funny, right? I think the biggest thing that's like real cope about this problem, the real cope that's coming from the right about the Mamdani victory is that so many people are looking at Mamdani. He's a democratic socialist, of course, but his policy prescriptions are social democratic in nature. Let's be honest here. Like, he is, internally a a democratic socialist. I mean, he's talked about worker ownership of the means of production, so he is on our side, right? But in terms of policy prescriptions, he's offering social democracy, right? Just kind of bog standard European social democracy, which is, of course, radical for Americans, right? And they're looking at this, the right-wingers are looking at this, the real capitalists are looking at this, and saying, well, Zohran Mamdani being mayor of the capitalist hub of the world, essentially, is going to destroy the American economy, is going to destroy the New York economy. I'm like, well, should we find a similar comparison in Europe? Let's have a look at, say, I don't know, the financial centre of the UK, the capitalist centre of the UK. And it's London, and London's been governed by a Muslim progressive social democrat for the last 9 years now. Has that caused capitalism to die? No it hasn't. Is London still a massive financial trading hub? Yes. Will the same be true of New York City under Zohran Mamdani? Like, literally, yes. Like, it's nothing fundamentally for the business class will change other than paying very, very slightly higher taxes and getting better public services, And on top of this, all of the business bellends who spend their time in Manhattan are now going to be able to get to work quicker because they're the ones who take taxis everywhere, and the streets will now be clearer of cars because more people will be taking the free buses. I mean, things will just be better. There'll be fewer homeless people. There'll be better riding the subway. Mental health problems will be lower. Crime will be lower because of the more focus on community safety. So actually, all of the business bellends will probably want to go back to New York City because it's got a public realm that actually functions again because the tax rate is slightly higher. And of course, as I said, they will have an easier time getting around, and they can drive. They can drive their ludicrously expensive saloon cars in the centre of New York because lots of people will no longer be driving because they'll be getting the free bus. True, Vicky. I mean, literally, Vaminsky, Rupert Lowe posted a picture of the fact that he went to London and got the headlights off his Porsche stolen, which is honestly fucking hilarious. I don't think he will do that, Andrew. Budgets are set by Congress, but I mean, of course, not that Trump will care about that, but I think it's likely the federal funds will just go there anyway. So he would have to not disperse the funding specifically to the entire state of New York, which I think would be very unlikely. It's funny how rightoids always talk about Khan has destroyed London, yet he has overwhelming support from the people who actually live there. And it's the fastest growing economy in the country, with some of the best public transport in the country and the highest standard of living in the country. Partially that's because we've not redistributed enough away from London. A lot of the wealth that was been created in London hasn't been distributed back towards the poorer areas outside of London as we've centralised our service economy around the financial sector, right? We've not taxed and redistributed out of London. But the idea that somehow Sadiq Khan has ruined London when it's just better in loads of different ways than most other cities in the country other than Manchester, it just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't, because again, their only conception of why London is bad is because it's got brown people in it. I always like Ken Livingstone's quote to Tories: "I want to make you more healthy and live longer so you can continue to vote against me." Literally, it's just like, I fucking hate you, you fucking communists. I would like to give you universal childcare and free buses, please. And that is the big problem with Sadiq Khan, is that his housing policy has been shit. It's been awful. And even after there was going to be a plan for more housing infrastructure being built in London, that's been scaled back. Despite the Labour Party promising this 1.5 million homes, that's not going to happen. Khan has done incredible in London when you consider the national government under which he has to work around. I mean, that's also true. But I think the thing is that's different, though, is that despite a lot of the cuts that have happened nationally from the Conservative government, what the mayor of London has is so many budgets that he gets access to from things like business rates. So, for example, free school meals, that's been a central part of Sadiq Khan's policy platform as London mayor, has come from an extra windfall that was unexpected from additional business rates revenue. That's how he was able to use the mayoral budget to fund free school meals, because London just didn't see any kind of economic collapse the way everywhere else had. And so the trend elsewhere that led business rates to fall, or business rates incomes to fall for local authorities, didn't happen in London. They got a big windfall from business rates. It's like, oh, I've got the spare money, have some free food. Which honestly, it's better than basically every other Labour politician that isn't Andy Burnham or Steve Rotherham. I mean, that is also true about London, about the Oyster Network, more broadly, or TfL, is that there's lots of public control over it. Weird how it's so good. Isn't that strange? Why didn't you move to London then? Because I like living here. Believe me, I would love to live in London. But the cost of living, I would need to earn a lot more than I do now to be able to afford to live in London. But I have friends and family and people that I know in the Midlands and in the North. Yeah, exactly, Kazoo. And that's the thing, what's funny is that the right have given up so badly on winning London that they don't attack London because they want the mayor to be deposed. They attack London because they want to tell the white flight regions of the country, if you don't vote Reform, you'll end up looking like London. That's it. That's the only reason they attack London, is to say that it's a bad example of multiculturalism, and if you there living in Saffron Walden, you'll end up like London if you keep voting for Labour, or you keep voting for the Greens, or you keep voting lefty. You've got to vote Reform, otherwise you'll become as diverse as London. You'll become crime-ridden, even though crime is down. Like, same shit as in New York, where crime is also down. And in the country where crime was also down. Yeah, housing costs are the real problem in London. Again, the big failure of Sadiq Khan as mayor is the lack of action on housing. You know? That's really sad, Mad Mark. And I guess my only kind of recent experiences of London is being in the area where Novara do their filming. Exactly, like, yeah, graffiti on the tube. And the thing is, the graffiti on the tube is only on, like, a couple of lines. Like, it's on the, like, if you're on, like, the central line, there's some graffiti. But as someone who takes the northern line and the Jubilee line every week, they're always immaculate. Or at least as close to immaculate as a subway should be, you know? But it's significant, like, the London Underground was significantly more clean than the Chicago Metro when I was there. Isn't most of the increase in crime we're seeing at the moment coming from fraud anyway? I mean, Eric Adams is still the mayor until January, John. I mean, Vegas just didn't have any public transport. Like, the public transport that you had in Vegas was Elon Musk's loop, and that was basically it, and it was shit. Like, I think this has to be my favourite piece of cope from the Labour right about the Mamdani victory. This guy who's like a perpetual, like, Fabian poster on Twitter, who's part of the Lincolnshire Labour Party, I believe, said that it was a classic British hard left trying to own the American left. Mamdani and Sanders would both be considered Labour moderates if they were over here, lol. Which is fucking hilarious to me for a bunch of reasons. First of all, his position as an anti-Zionist is basically grounds for suspension and expulsion from the Labour Party. It is the preserve of the hard left, to be pro-one-state solution and anti-Zionist. And second of all, one of the central policies of Mamdani's election campaign was making buses fast and free. The Labour government, what was one of the first things they did when they got into government last year? They increased the bus prices by 50%, which is a policy that is the opposite of making buses fast and free. It is a policy of increasing public transport costs, specifically targeted at the type of transport that the poorest in society use, by making it very regressive as a policy. Second of all, it saved peanuts in terms of the overall budget. They served like a couple of £100 million or whatever by increasing the bus fare cap. And at the same time, they froze fuel duty, which is used by motorists who are, broadly as a cohort, much more well off than bus users. So a totally regressive policy platform, the total opposite of what Mamdani was running on. These people haven't got a clue. Not got a clue at all. Well, I did see that, Vicky, yeah. Yeah, like Corbyn was campaigning for him, the guy who was expelled for being too left-wing. The poorest and those who can't just walk everywhere, like disabled young people and the elderly. Exactly. Exactly. I should watch Zach from this morning on the Ridge and Frost show, which is a new thing.
So happy to have you on today, because I think there's an awful lot of interesting stuff to talk to relating to New York. I'm just going to ask about your poppy first. What's
The idea that America is more right-wing than us and the Democrats are more right-wing than the Tories is no longer arguable. Is there some received wisdom that hasn't gone away with the shifting of the Overton window? I think that's very true, Monkey Nuts. Like, they've not really moved very left-wing, but we've moved very right-wing. Although I would think it's perfectly reasonable to make the case that Joe Biden is significantly to the left of Keir Starmer on trans people, certainly, on industrial policy, on macroeconomic policy, on child tax credit, maybe not a minimum wage and workers' rights, although he was pro-union, and Lena Khan as chair of the FTC, who's now part of Mamdani's transition team, which is good. Lena Khan, so fucking based, so glad to see that she's all on the Zoran train. I think it's perfectly reasonable to say that actually the Democratic Party are centrist, whereas Labour are kind of centre-right on a lot of policies. I mean, Joe Biden tried to cancel student debt, but he didn't try very hard.
what's the poppy about?
Well, the red poppy is for remembrance and the white poppy is for peace. And I think it's important both to reflect back on history, but also look to the future and say this is a time to talk about peace and diplomacy too.
Right, let's get your thoughts on Zoran Mamdani's win in New York. What are the
I did see that. Tommy told me it was great.
lessons?
Well, I feel like I'm grinning from ear to ear because, first of all, I think it just feels like a delightful moment where hope has triumphed. And although that's about New York, I think it's also about improving.
Where do you stand on poppies? They repeatedly insulted on a Simmer channel the other day. I think it's the first time I felt genuinely angry. I mean, I'm like Zach. I will wear the red poppy and the white poppy. So I'm going to start this segment again because I got sidetracked by comments. But yeah, I support both the red. I wear both the red poppy and the white poppy because I believe in honouring the sacrifices of people from our country and from our allies broadly during conflicts earlier on in the 20th century. And I also support the idea of ensuring those conflicts never happen again, which has been somewhat removed as a concept from the poppy campaign and the poppy appeal from the Royal British Legion over the last however many years. Because I think it's worth pointing out that whilst the red poppy is just there to talk about like the people who died, it doesn't delineate between the Second World War that was incredibly necessary to beat Nazi Germany and the rest of the Axis powers. The First World War was completely unjustifiable, totally unjustifiable, and just a bunch of inter-imperial conflict for no reason that threw working class people into a slaughterhouse for no reason at all. So unless you can have a proactive support for peace, only talking about the sacrifice of the military without talking about the actions of governments that caused them to having to make that sacrifice is an incomplete story. But I will always support wearing both a red and a white poppy.
This is a time to talk about peace and diplomacy too.
Right, let's get your thoughts on Zoran Mamdani's win in New York? Or what are the lessons?
Well, I feel like I'm grinning from ear to ear because, first of all, I think it just feels like a delightful moment where hope has triumphed. And although that's about New York, I think it's also about improving people's lives, both in America, but that's what we need to do right across England and Wales. And I think what Zoran really did was connect with the lives of ordinary people, mobilise young people. And it wasn't just about social media. I think that sometimes it becomes about the communication style. He's undoubtedly an incredible communicator. But actually, I think it was about the policies. It was a relentless focus on inequality. And that's exactly what we're going to do here.
This is the thing that's interesting.
And that's so important. It's so important to make this point over and over and over again. So many people will try and paint Zoran Mamdani as energizing young people, as about being slick on social media, as making good TikToks and Instagram reels, when the actual reality of the victory was inspiring hundreds of thousands of campaigners and door knockers, and about offering policies that solve the material problems. Because he didn't just win over a brand new coalition of younger, highly energized voters, even though he did do that. He also won over South Asian voters. He also won over people from minority communities who don't vote. He won over so many people who voted for Trump in the last election. He won amongst black people and the general, even though he lost with black people in the primary in Queens or in the Bronx. And he brought together this huge coalition of people on the central policies that he put forward of solving the cost of living crisis. And that's what we are doing as well. So to try and dismiss Mamdani as an artifact of social media and being charismatic, rather than the fact that the people do want democratic socialism, or at the very least social democracy, is something that will continually have to be pushed back on, because it'll be a line the political class want to go with to undermine the idea of socialist politicians being popular.
Interesting, isn't it? So he's a left-wing socialist. He's been unafraid in taking on the right. He's been very critical of Donald Trump. He wants to tax millionaires. Are you the British Mamdani?
Well, he's much cooler than I am, and I think it's important to know where your coolness lies. But actually, what I do entirely intend to do is the same relentless focus on inequality.
You're modelling yourself a bit on what he's done. Is that fair to say?
Well, it's interesting. We were roughly doing it at the same time, actually. So I think this isn't about one person's learning from another, but I think the left more generally around the world are going absolute solidarity with minority communities, with trans people, with migrants. But actually, the problems that are facing them more than anything is inequality. And inequality faces all of us, other than multimillionaires and billionaires. So let's talk about what we have in common and make sure we take the fight to the right.
I think it's really important. What I will say is one thing that Mamdani does that I think Zach Polanski can learn from here is that I think Zach Polanski will bring up trans people and migrants out of the blue a little bit too often. I understand that he wants to show the solidarity, wants to show that he is not like the other parties that are demonising and scapegoating these minority communities. I understand why he's doing this. But one of the reasons why both Mamdani and Bernie Sanders are really, really, really popular and really good at solving those issues is that they will answer honestly and sincerely about their support for minority communities whenever they are asked about it. But when they're asked about it, they'll go, that's a separate issue from my main issue, which is about economic issues, which is about class. So they don't ever throw anyone under the bus. But what they do specifically do is only bring it up if it's relevant. Because I think even people who don't necessarily disagree with us on a bunch of social issues, right, or don't care even about those social issues, don't like to think of the left as being people who only care about social issues, right? Despite the fact that we have always had huge amounts of support for economic positions. And also, we've tried to communicate our economic positions. Like, people tried to claim that the Jeremy Corbyn campaign was all about identity politics, when no, central to the whole thing was economics. That's why he was so popular. But the people who are really obsessed with identity politics are the ones who don't want to talk about our economic policies and try and divert from it. But regardless, people will hear us bring up minority communities in situations that aren't relevant, that makes it look like we care about it more than the economic arguments, even though I don't think that's necessarily true. So I think the way in which Zach has been really, really strong about protecting trans people is that he talked about inequality with Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan then tried to change it to his opinions on trans people. He gave a strong affirmative answer about his positions on trans people and then said, but that's not my issue. People can't afford to feed their kids. People can't afford to pay their rent. I'm here to talk about the issues that matter to me, which is inequality, which is the cost of living crisis, which is solving lives for working class people across this country. While you're trying to talk about women having penises and trans people is a distraction from the real issue. That's the way in which I think you're supposed to tackle these issues, rather than say something about trans people or migrants without it being specifically invoked by your interviewer. I think that's important. It was very good, John. Yeah, I did enjoy that. I agree with you, Jordan. I agree with that 100%.
Democrats were sceptical about him, but he's won in New York and he's won big. Do you think that you could be the next Prime Minister?
I think it's not for me right now about a focus on being Prime Minister, and that's not avoiding the question, because I want to answer the question really directly. My focus right now, though, is making sure we get 30, 40, maybe even more MPs at the next general election. Now, that was what I was saying a few weeks ago. Since I've said that, I've been elected about 2 months today. We've over doubled the Green Party membership. We've had a poll where we've overtaken the Labour government. So to answer your question directly, things are changing rapidly.
Yeah, because Piers really understands the cost of living crisis. Well, it's exactly what I was talking about with Nicky Morgan before. It's exactly the same thing I was talking about when I was saying that the reason why she comes up with loads of harebrained reasons as to why left-wingers might win, for example, is because she doesn't understand the cost of living crisis. And there's a reason why Piers Morgan wants to talk about trans people, is because he doesn't have any fucking real problems. None of our media class have any real problems. Lots of them are, you know, making money hand over fist, stealing a living, tippy-tapping on their MacBook for 2 hours a week, posting 2 articles for the Times on why trans people are subhuman, and that's their paycheck sorted. That's their paycheck sorted. That's literally it. And that's why they don't want to talk about cost of living, is because they have pet issues because cost of living isn't their issue. And that's the problem. That's the big problem. And it makes the interviewers look bad. It makes them look out of touch. If you respond to a question about trans people and say, what the fuck are you talking about trans people for? I'm going to talk about cost of living and the real issues that face ordinary people, and you're talking about 1% of the population, you fucking insane. It makes the interviewers look out of touch and the politicians look in touch. And that's really important. You've got to remember, the issues around trans people are only relevant to like 1% of the population who actually care about these issues. So whilst making your position clear, and stating your support for the trans community is really important to show solidarity, making sure that you only invoke it when and as necessary, rather than bringing it up when you don't necessarily need to, I think is a stronger tactic rhetorically.
Rapidly for me and the Green Party, and now 30 to 40 MPs is starting to look unambitious. I can't give you an exact number yet because we've got to go away, work the numbers and go, actually, if we keep growing at this pretty much exponential rate, what are our ambitions at the next general election? But right now, that isn't being Prime Minister. It's just making sure we get as big a block of Green MPs as possible.
You say that 30 to 40 MPs looks unambitious for you, and I know you don't want to put a number on it, but can you give me a bit of a sense of what is the sort of target? What are you looking for? Are you like looking to enter a coalition or to be part of a government or to, you know, get over 50 MPs? What is it?
So we definitely want to hold the balance to power, because actually, ultimately, what I want for this country is to make sure that we are taxing wealth more than we're taxing work.
You're focusing on the wrong 1%. It's the quickest response I can think of. That is an incredible zinger. That's an incredible zinger, Mel. I'm going to put that in the memory bank for the next time it's brought up in a debate. I'm going to bring that up immediately, right? 1% of the population is transgender, and yet 1% of the population are billionaires. I think that one of these 1% is far more of a concern for our society than the other. Transphobes thinks about trans people more than we do. It's so true. It's so fucking true, Jess. And like people, another thing. It's another thing that drove me around the bend as well. In that, whenever there was a discussion about Scottish politics, people would keep saying, "Oh well, the Scottish National Party have lost the support of the people of Scotland because they've stopped talking about independence and they're talking about niche identity issues." And I'm like, they've not been talking about it. They haven't been talking. Like the Scottish National Party opened up a bill on self-ID 6 years ago. It was passed through Holyrood with support of the opposition parties as well, or the opposition unionists, all passed the self-ID policy without a hitch. The people who actually constantly bang on about trans people and niche identity issues are right-wingers. It was Rishi Sunak's government that decided to overrule the sovereignty of Holyrood to block self-ID, even though it was backed by the Labour, the Lib Dems, and even the Conservatives at the time. And it was Alex Salmond who had this massive splitter campaign with Alba, his fucking vanity trope, like his transphobic vanity project, to try and win people over because they had this disagreement on one issue, which is an issue of identity, and then try and claim that was all the SNP cared about. I mean, the SNP have been in government doing not like perfect things. They're far too right-wing for me in terms of lots of policy, but broadly in terms of a kind of a soft left mandate for governance, they've been doing fine. They've been doing good things. And people don't mention these things because they're too busy banging on about fucking trans people. Yeah, literally Sunak blew up the union. Like, Sunak literally nearly blew up the union because of a weird debate about trans people that was only a debate because they lost their fucking marbles about it and were concerned about trans people far more than the SNP were. They had a policy, it was in consultation, it went through consultation just fine, all the parties supported it, wasn't an issue, was then put on the later base and they got back to governing for the people of Scotland. And then Rishi Sunak and Alistair Jack decided to get mad about it, and suddenly all the SNP only care about trans people. It's nonsense. It's real nonsense.
I want to make sure we have action on the climate crisis, and I want to bring in proportional representation.
What does hold the balance of power mean? Does that mean you would go into, say, a coalition with Labour or a supply and demand? What do you want to do?
Well, again, most politicians would say, I'm not going to answer that question right now, but you're asking me a direct question, so I'll give you a direct answer. I wouldn't go into coalition with Keir Starmer. This is a man who has perpetrated an ongoing genocide in Gaza. He ran on the coattails of Jeremy Corbyn, and I would say he ditched every single pledge he could. So I think the man's proven to be untrustworthy. However, I don't think he'll be Prime Minister at the next election. So it's very difficult for me to predict what a relationship between the Green Party and the Labour Party look like until I know who the future leader will be.
So what about Nigel Farage then? Are you saying that you might do a deal with him?
No, there's no way I'd do a deal with Nigel Farage.
So if you're looking at Labour, would a condition be, so I know I'm jumping ahead on all those things, but like, you things have changed. Like you said, your ambitions have changed. Are you thinking that, one of your conditions would be a different leader of the Labour Party, for example, that you felt you could work with?
I'm not sure it'd be for the Green Party leader to demand who Labour led with, but I think Labour membership and people who are thinking about voting Labour in the past are increasingly voting with their feet and moving over to the Green Party anyway, as well as lots of ex-Tories who are joining the Green Party. It's interesting, often.
I think as well, one thing that I would like to have seen mentioned here too is that obviously if there was going to be a potential confidence and supply agreement or coalition government or whatever it was with a future Labour leader, like an unborn Miliband or whatever, it's actually making the point, well, it wouldn't be up to me. It'll be up to the Green Party members. I would happy to negotiate a deal with a future Labour leader if they have policy prescriptions that fit in with the Green Party's ideological position, and then it would put to members, and if they want to support that, they get the final say because they're our membership. Wouldn't be for me to judge. But I think that the Green Party as a collective, as a political party that's member-led, would want to do whatever they could to keep reform out.
The phenomenon is that we're just getting disillusioned left-wing voters. But actually, there's lots of people who are looking at Kemi Badenoch and going, I care about basic things like science and like decency, and actually those values lie in the Green Party too.
You gave a speech last night on climate change, and of course we've got the COP conference kicking off this week, the big climate conference. Do you have any high hopes for it, or are you or not?
I don't have any high hopes for it at all, but what I do have hopes, because that's the number one thing we have to do, is that we can sort out the climate crisis. We're in the crucial decade of action. We had the UN Secretary General just a week or two ago say we're going to overshoot some of those vital targets, and it barely made a headline. And I think that's because we've all been paralysed into this kind of fear and doom-mongering of there's nothing we can do about it. We hold agency and power, and when I say we, I'm talking about the country and the government. If we make sure that the polluter pays, we need to hold fossil fuel companies accountable. It is outrageous that we've just had a hurricane in Jamaica that has killed people and caused mass devastation. Why are we calling it Hurricane Melissa? It should be called Hurricane Shell. Or at this point, it should be called Hurricane Labour, because actually we still have a Labour government who are giving fossil fuel subsidies to oil and gas rather than subsidising things like they should be, like train travel.
Look, I understand.
And literally making it more expensive to take the bus whilst freezing fuel duty for motorists. And not properly funding, for example, the expansion of HS2 to its original mandate, you know? Thank you, Stu. Zach should have said, no deal reform, I'm not into red-brown alliances. True! Or green-brown alliances. I'm enjoying the dark woke moment from Zach there, going, yeah, it should be Hurricane Labour. I mean, in reality, if you really want to look at who to blame for these things, you should call it Hurricane Tory, because they were the ones who spent too long not doing industrial policy investing in green energy, and who were the ones who originally gave out the license for Rosebank 2. I guess it's Hurricane Permanent Political Class, Hurricane Neoliberalism. And they cut their green investment pledge before they even joined government. Although I think they expect their green investment pledge to make roughly the same amount, but like 75% of it's going to be from private investment rather than the public investment they originally promised. I think what Tice's wife must have UK paid protection while she's living in Dubai. Hope she didn't get caught with a very, very small amount of heroin on her. Like on her shoe, because that's happened before. People have gone to the UAE, they've had like weed on their shoe, and that they've just walked in somewhere and then get caught as like a drug smuggler. Hurricane, I mean, it quite literally is hurricane capitalism.
Entirely how passionately, the Green Party is supporting these climate arguments. But the hurricane in Jamaica killed people, right? It devastated people's homes. And you're saying it should be called Hurricane Labour. I mean, that's quite incendiary, isn't it? We've seen, protests against Labour MPs. We've seen people having, panic alarms.
Don't be mean to the Labour Party. I love how she's trying to equate making a joke about the hurricane and global climate events being the fault of government's failure to deal with climate change. And saying, you know what this is like, Zach? This is like the kind of language that caused violent threats towards politicians. This is incendiary rhetoric that's going to put MPs in harm's way. Come on, mate, it's a fucking joke. I thought comedy was legal now.
You're saying that the name of a hurricane should be the Labour Party.
Well, let's be clear about what is incendiary. The Labour Party right now aren't refusing to rule out the Rosebank oil field. This is a new oil field where the cumulative carbon emission impacts will be the same as 28 of the poorest and low-income countries in the world. This is sociopathic behaviour if they don't rule it out. So I accept that what I'm saying is strong language. But we need to have stronger language about the climate crisis. It is killing people. Now, are the Labour Party fully responsible? Absolutely not. The fossil fuel companies are responsible, and that's why I've said that. But they are still subsidising those fossil fuel companies, and there are consequences to the decisions that the government make. And so what I'm saying, I don't doubt people like Ed Miliband, for instance, really understand this issue and they care about it deeply. But at what point are you still expanding aviation and expanding runways and not recognising your impact that you're having on the planet and the destruction of the planet?
You don't...
Literally, again, like this idea that policy doesn't have consequences. You can't just say that the problems with climate change are being exacerbated by the government because of their own decisions. Yes, I can. I can actually do that. I can say that the government's failure on policy has consequences because it does and it's true, you know?
Flying planes, you don't drive, you're a vegan. I'm just interested to say, if you were UK Prime Minister and you were asked to attend COP, which presumably means getting on a plane, what would you do?
I would go, because that would be a different circumstance. But I also always want to say to people that I don't fly and I don't drive and I'm vegan because I'm Green Party leader and I have the power and the privilege to make those choices. But none of it is about that. It's not about individual responsibility. Yeah. It's straight back to the last conversation we're having. Yeah. This is about government and big business making that system change rather than pointing at individuals.
So you're not trying to be holy.
And that's just so true. It's so true. Like, when you actually look at the real scale of the issue, the problem in terms of climate change, in terms of who is responsible for climate change, shouldn't be on individual people, even though we would always suggest people to make more climate-conscious decisions, personally. I would always suggest that you do that. I understand that not everybody can make those decisions, right? But is it the fault of working-class families going on holiday to Tenerife once a year in planes full of hundreds of people at a time, that are causing climate change and fuel usage and emissions? Or is it Taylor Swift in her private jet flying hundreds and hundreds of miles around America in a plane with 3 people on it constantly? Is it the class of billionaires who do these things with total impunity that is the issue? And I think there's a real problem in how we're losing people around the green transition, in that people look at the green transition and go, well, why is it one rule for us and not a rule for the well-connected super rich? They are getting their behaviour totally unpoliced, and ours is being policed by the state or being made more expensive and harder by the state. You should be having things like, I don't know, what the Green Party are proposing, like a carbon tax, which would fundamentally be focused at people who use lots of carbon, which are multinational corporations, which are people flying in private jets, which are people who go on lots of business trips every year over and over and over again, and is not somebody who's just heating their home or driving their car or getting on a plane once a year to go on holiday in the Mediterranean. Because I think that there is plenty that we can do to reduce emissions that doesn't kneecap prosperity for the 99%. You should be able to go on holiday once a year to Italy or Greece or the Canary Islands, right? You should be able to do that as a working class person and not have the government try and hold you personally responsible for climate change when you aren't the issue.
Thou, basically.
Absolutely not.
What's your kind of advice? You must have a little, like, ungreen...
Do you know what? You asked me that
secret.
last time when I was on the
I
show,
know,
and I
you haven't
thought,
got
I wish
any,
I
have
had a
you?
better
You must
answer.
have something.
I mean, I love chocolate, but obsessively so. Vegan chocolate, obviously.
I don't think
and
that
as I'm putting on the
counts.
weight, I'm thinking I should probably put that
I don't think
to one
that
side.
counts, I have to say.
I'll work on a better one for next time.
He is really good at this, isn't he? He's really good at this. Just talking like a normal human being really counts for a lot in British politics at this point. He brought up that people kept saying that in my chat when I spoke to him, Ollie. Which is funny. 80% of aviation passenger emissions are the result of the 20% of frequent flyers. I'm like, literally, I am quite literally one of the people who's at fault for this. I've on like 3 round trips this year, 2 of them cross-Atlantic, right? Like, I am part of the frequent I mean, at least this year, I was one of the frequent flyers that's at fault here, and I should have been charged more for going on 3 flights in a year rather than 1. But even then, like, my gallivanting across the United States to play in card tournaments is significantly less than continual trips of those who fly around the world fucking 20 times a year or 30 times a year. After the interview, they commented on him actually giving straight answers. Oh, have you got a link to that? Do you have the link to the video of him being complimented by Sophie Ridge? Am I the Taylor Swift of the Magic the Gathering world? No, the professionals are, right? The MTG pro players are the Taylor Swifts. I am not a pro player. I am somebody who qualified for the Pro Tour twice. But there are obviously pro players who fly 5 times a year to go on the Pro Tour, so... Like, I usually try to limit my flying to once a year. So I will go to the Mediterranean once a year, basically, but I would try not to fly more than that. And just this year happened to be an anomaly because I was flying to the Pro Tour twice, and the Pro Tour was in America twice, right? When I've gone to play Magic tournaments in Europe, I've got on the train.
Zach Polanski, leader of the Green Party. Is he the British Mamdani?
You're speaking to him imminently.
Are you the British Mamdani?
I think what Zoran really did was connect with the lives of ordinary people, mobilise young people, and it wasn't just about social media. I think that sometimes it becomes about the communication style. He's undoubtedly an incredible communicator, but actually I think it was about the policies. It was a relentless focus on inequality, and that's exactly what we're going to do here.
And we've been talking all morning about the authenticity of Mamdani. Absolutely a comparison to be made there.
Yeah, there is.
Do you know what? And for our jobs, the best authentic part of it is answering the questions.
Yeah, I know.
I've thought this for ages, that if you stick to these PR prepared comms answers, it's not helping them. It's hurting politicians that do that. People want authentic. They can see through the answers that are pre-prepared and not being answered. And it comes across so well. And you ask some really tough questions to predict forward to being Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Normally they'd be like, gosh, I can't possibly go there.
I thought it was
He
really
went there.
interesting. He basically said that now 30 to 40 MPs, the Green Party is unambitious at the next election. I cannot tell you what a transformation of our kind of electoral maps that would be if that's unambitious. And also that he wants to hold the balance of power in the next government.
And that was my second big takeaway. All of those questions were absolutely spot on. But
Thanks, Will.
No.
Nice, isn't he?
But if we had discussed that 2 weeks ago, we would have thought it's mad. The momentum is crazy. And again, that brings back to Mamdani a bit. It's kind of like Mamdani 6 months ago before he got the Democratic nomination.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's amazing how quickly the questions you would ask him have drastically changed and it not sound ludicrous.
Zach Polanski.
I mean, yeah, like when they're polling ahead of Labour, I think when you ask about, well, how many seats do you want to win, I think what you essentially have to say here is that, well, we want to replace Labour electorally, so we're coming for the Labour safe seats. We're coming for Walthamstow, we're coming for Tottenham, we're coming for Manchester Central, we're coming for Sheffield Central, we're coming for Sheffield Meadowhall, we're coming for Bristol North East, we're coming for Leeds Central, we're coming for Liverpool West Derby, we're coming for Birkenhead, we're coming for Cardiff South. We're coming for all of these kind of seats, and the sky really is the limit. But there are lots of Labour safe seats that we can really, really tap into, and those should be where we, like, if we want to get asked, where are you thinking of you want to win? I'm like, these seats are ripe for the taking. We're polling ahead in them. We're projected to win them already. That's where we want to go for. Coming for Holborn and St Pancras. True! We literally are coming everywhere. I came when I heard you beat the Elite Four. When you heard you beat the Elite Four. I mean, they should be asking whether Labour will tactically vote for the Green Party, given that we're polling ahead. No, I don't think so. I think she'll join your party. I'd love to see Andrew Feinstein join the Greens. What I do want to see, chat, I want to see Zach Polanski run against Keir Starmer in Holborn and St Pancras at the next election. I want to see Keir Starmer's concession speech happen in the same place as Zach Polanski's victory speech. That would be fucking hilarious. I mean, I would have said the name of that seat, Prosecutor Zekrom, if I remembered what the name of that Liverpool seat was. I'm trying to think. So the Liverpool seats are Liverpool West Derby, Liverpool Wavertree, and I don't remember the other two ones, because there's 4 Liverpool seats, right? I know West Derby and I know Liverpool Wavertree. What are the other ones? Well, there's 5. There's Walton, Riverside, and Garston, as well as Wavertree and West Derby. Okay. Oh, definitely Walton and Garston are the ones we should be coming for. Because Garston is fucking Maria Eagle, and then Liverpool Walton is Dan Carden. Yeah, I want to get those fuckers out. There are definitely plenty of seats here that we could potentially take. Yeah, I will crawl on my fucking hands and knees to go and canvass in Birkenhead to get Joe Bird elected. It'll be so fucking funny to watch Alison McGovern get unseated by somebody who was kicked out of the Labour Party for being anti-Semitic as a Jewish person, you know? Well, there'll be like, not only is she a great politician and somebody who I'd love to see in the halls of power because she's great, on top of that, it would also be very, very funny to kick Labour in the teeth. Metaphorically, of course. I think there's also a chance midnight stand that Diane Abbott might retire as well, which means that Zach could run in Hackney North. Do you think Starmer will stand at the next election and stand in Holborn and St Pancras? I mean, I should stress, that's a really good point. He might not stand at the next election. He might try and fade into obscurity as the most hated man in the country. Jovan Owusu-Nepal first mercy, and has a podcast now called What's Left. It was a good episode with Aaron Bastani on recently. It's so strange how they've labelled her an extreme leftist and anti-Semite. She's so chill and on point, it doesn't make sense when you meet her. That's because the Labour right are fucking mental. They're just completely insane. I don't know Midnight Stan. It'd be interesting to see what she would say. She was against the idea of split of the new Corbyn party. Like, she was explicitly against it. So I don't, maybe because she's very loyal to Labour specifically. Was Joe Bird the one who was kicked out because she said due process as a joke? Yes, she is the one who got kicked out for saying due process as a joke. And she was also the one and she also got kicked out for being, the official reason was given is because she supported Labour against the witch hunt. Although she didn't even necessarily support them. She spoke at a Labour against the witch hunt event before they got proscribed as an organisation, and then they retroactively expelled her, even though she'd only ever associated with them in that one speech that was done before they were proscribed internally within the Labour Party. It's fucked up. I mean, as much as I like Jovan, I think he's a bit too posh. It was totally mad, Vicky. Yeah, totally mad. But then again, it was just any excuse they needed to purge the party of the fleas, and now they're begging for the fleas to come back. It's quite funny. It really was Myron, wasn't it? It was wild. I'm glad I did a segment on it. I didn't get much coverage elsewhere. Probably want to finish off with a segment today, and I want to have a talk about things. I want to have a talk. I don't know, Vicky. Again, I think the issue is that AI is trained on a bunch of Nazi shit now, because a bunch of the people in the tech brosphere are just Nazis, right? So I've talked on stream before. I'm start this fucking segment again. Fuck that one up. So we've discussed on stream before, and I've discussed previously in this stream about how the mainstream media are trying to paint Zoran Mamdani's win as specifically being about his campaign on social media, his charisma, his use of video content to be able to generate a buzz. And whilst it is true, he has been really good at doing good social media content, at understanding the attention economy, being charismatic and answering questions directly and sincerely, these aren't the reasons why Zoran has been as successful as he has been. Charisma can only get you so far. Good social media content can only get you so far. We've actually seen, in terms of other Democratic Party primaries, where corporate Democrats have tried to copy the Mamdani style when it comes to how they present themselves on social media, have in no way been successful at winning people over, because they don't have the actual source that Zoran has that has allowed him to be successful by utilizing these communication techniques. And what I want to do is go through the 3 biggest reasons that I think that Zoran was as successful as he was, and how this is going to be a blueprint for the left in terms of their levels of campaigning moving forward. The big one to start with is obviously policy, right? But it's not just the kind of policies that you do, democratic, socialist, left-wing, populist policies. I think there's loads of space for these broadly around the world as there's skepticism of the power of big business, of the failure of the state, and of the continual immiseration of working class people around the world. I think there's lots of scope for leftist, populist arguments on terms of the economy, in terms of policy. But it's not just the fact that he did populist left-wing policy that made him so successful. The key reason why the Mamdani campaign was as successful as it was because the policies they chose 3 big policies, 3 main policies to put to the electorate. They repeated them over and over again to get them into the minds of the public so that people knew exactly the policies that not only they were voting for, but the campaigners were campaigning for, and they were very easy to understand. So during the campaign period in the run-up to the 2016 referendum on whether the UK should leave the European Union or not, the Leave campaign had a red bus they took around the country, and it just said, we spend £350 million per year on the EU, we should spend that on the NHS instead. Oh, was it per year? Sorry, let me just double check. It's £350 million a week, sorry. A red bus that said, we send £350 million a week to the EU, let's spend that on the NHS instead. Really simple slogan, and it was a big talking point throughout the general election. It was a really big talking point throughout the referendum campaign because of its simplicity. And that's one of the kind of reasons why the messaging was so strong, and it folded into a bunch of concerns that people had in this country about the failures of austerity and deindustrialization in the kind of heartlands that voted for Brexit at the time. The kind of people who've been won over from Trump to Mamdani in the Democratic primary and in the general election are the kind of people who were also the kind of ones who would culturally have voted for Brexit because they'd been left behind by the centralised service economy politics that had become represented by the Labour Party establishment that was rejected by the electorate in a similar way to Biden was in the general election for the president last year. Really simple message to win people over and fold it into people's other concerns, and that helped the Brexit campaign win that argument. Now, whilst those were lies, the things that were written on the side of the bus were just total lies about how much we spend on the European Union and how much we could therefore spend on the NHS if we didn't do it. That was a bunch of nonsense, right? But it does prove that the way you do your policy messaging has to resonate with the public, and it has to be understandable from those policies being talked about. If you're explaining, you're losing. And so what Zoran Mamdani did was take policies and they passed the red bus test, which is that if you just see the policy, you know what it means, and you can judge whether you like it or not immediately. What did he choose? Very, very simple. Freeze the rent. Make buses fast and free. Deliver universal childcare. 3 big policies, very simple to understand. You don't need to explain them when you're talking about them, and it was a really good way of winning people over as it dovetailed really, really neatly into the previous concerns people already had about the cost of living crisis. Transport is expensive, we're going to make it free by taxing people. Childcare is expensive, we're going to provide it universally via the municipal administration. Rents are too high. The mayor's office has the power to freeze them for rent-stabilised tenants. We're going to do it. We're going to freeze the rent, make buses fast and free. We're going to offer universal childcare. All 3 very easy to understand policies that would directly help the cost of living crisis. And that's what we have to do. So the Green Party has basically already started with this by talking about lowering bills, nationalising the water companies. I think we can build on those and try and make specific policies the basis of this. So rather than talk about just lowering bills, like a policy that is easy to understand and implement, that people will hear and understand that it means lower bills, rather than just nebulously talking about doing the good things. But fundamentally, this is where the left should be aiming their campaign strategy in terms of trying to craft policies that speak to the electorate and help deal with those concerns. Because people don't really have ideologies in terms of how they view politics. People like to think of themselves as non-ideological. And I think whilst lots of people who say that really are very ideological, in terms of the broader public, what they have is a set of concerns, and you want to offer policies that fix those concerns. It doesn't matter whether it's capitalist, socialist, left, right. People just want to know that politicians are on their side and speaking languages and speaking policy that they understand and that they think will solve those issues. That's what the left needs to focus on. The second thing that was the basis of Mamdani's victory was not abandoning minorities. He never abandoned any minority. He proudly marched with a trans pride flag showing that he supported the community. But he never made that a focus of his election campaign. The same is true of his solidarity with the Palestinians and his opposition to Israel's genocide in Gaza. Whilst he was continually held accountable for it, he was continually asked by other candidates who are far more obsessed with Israel than he is about his positions. He never downplayed his position. He never shied away from his desire to support an ethical foreign policy, to support the idea of arresting war criminals, even if they're from allied nations, if they ever came to New York City, in accordance with the jurisdiction of the ICC. He never shied away from his desire to see that the state of Israel should not exist as an ethno-state in the region, because that is the fundamental basis of the oppression of the Palestinians. He never shied away from the idea of wanting to oppose Trump's authoritarianism against migrant communities across America, but also specifically in New York City. He never shied away from any of these social issues. But what he did do was when people started talking about it, he would go, I'm focusing on cost of living, actually. I'm focusing on the economy. Should I go visit Israel? I'm going to stay in New York. I'm going to solve issues for New Yorkers. I'm not here to talk about Israel. I'm here to talk about New York City. I'm here to talk about the cost of living crisis. I'm here to talk about affordability. And that's the key issue in terms of communication that the left need to be able to copy from Mamdani. This is what Bernie Sanders has been doing for ages, going very specifically, well, of course I have every solidarity with migrant communities, with trans people, with Palestinians, whatever it is, even though his support for the Palestinians was Not as strong as it could have been when it comes to Bernie Sanders, right? But broadly, he had socially progressive, woke opinions, but he never brought them up unless he was asked about it. And when he was asked about it, he'd go, of course I show solidarity, but let's focus on the economy. Let's talk about class. Let's talk about inequality. Let's talk about millionaires and billionaires and mega corporations rather than niche social issues that only journalists care about. We saw this with Zach Polanski on Piers Morgan's show, Piers Morgan Uncensored, where Piers Morgan was obsessed with talking about trans women and trying to get Zach to have an answer on issues around trans people. And Zach's response was, well, yeah, I support trans people, obviously I do, but this is a nonsense point. Let's talk about cost of living. Let's talk about affordability. Let's talk about the fact that people can't feed their kids, can't pay their rent. Those are the real issues that your viewers care about. You only care about trans people, Piers, because you're maniacally obsessed, just like every myopic member of our journalist class in this country. Not that you'd call Piers Morgan a journalist, he's a YouTuber now, but I digress. That's how we have to take our policy on social issues moving forward. Don't back down, like people like Wes Streeting have, but don't make it central, but make sure that we know what we stand for and what we stand against. That is the key issue that has made Mamdani so well liked amongst the voter base, because whenever he's asked about these things, whenever he's asked about social or geopolitical issues, he goes, this is my position, but I don't care about that right now. Let's talk about the cost of living crisis and what I can do as mayor to solve that. Very, very, very smart messaging from Mamdani. The third, and what I think is the biggest point that we can learn from the Mamdani victory, is that whilst he had a good social media campaign, he was good when he was on TV. He was good in interviews. He had good adverts that he put out on terrestrial television. This wasn't why he won in the way that he did. He won because he mobilized people on the ground to campaign for him. You can't tweet your way to victory. Victory takes hard work. It takes campaigning, it takes canvassing, it takes door knocking, it takes phone banking. It takes every single person doing their bit on the ground to speak to people and have hard conversations. That is how you win elections. That is how you maintain a base of support, not just once, but again and again and again. You win people over on the doorstep. And whilst this social media campaign was really good at winning people over to become canvassers, it was the hundreds of thousands of canvassers they got onto the streets of New York City. It was the millions of doors that they knocked. It was the millions of people that they phone banked. It was the massive on-the-ground campaign that allowed Mamdani to win this election. It was the on-the-ground campaign of activists and organisers wanting to ensure that they spoke to every single person that they could in New York City and have those conversations to explain what they thought about and what they supported and what they were planning on doing to solve the issues of people in New York City. They didn't expect that they would be able to make their victory happen on Twitter or on TikTok or on Instagram. And while social media is a powerful tool and we need to utilize it in every way that we can, if we want to win, and from my perspective, that's from the Green Party, we will need people knocking on doors. We will need to be going in the pouring rain on some days and speaking to people about what's happening in the local elections next May, in other local elections between now and the next general election, and in the next general election. It will need members, it will need campaigners, it will need canvassers, and we need people to sign up to do that. We cannot win by expecting people to come to us. We have to come to them. We have to understand people's concerns, not just in terms of writing policy that solves those concerns, but speaking to them face to face and explaining to them why our manifesto, why our prospectus for government is good for them. And unless we have that personal connection, those personal conversations face to face, the left will fail. Mamdani has proven it can be successful. Let's replicate that here. I love Corbyn, but I think he's bad at politics, as we have seen when he surrounded himself with people like Keir Starmer now and Hussein. Yeah, I agree, James, I agree. Anyway, it's now coming up to midnight. I've been going for 2 hours, so I'm going to love you and leave you. Let's see who's online. Kevin is live. Let's go and send you into Kevin, Logan. And I'll be back tomorrow with Novara Media. Hopefully I'll be back in the evening for question time with Kev if my train is on time. I hope it is on time. I'll be back for hopefully we'll be able to do question time tomorrow. If not, I'll be back on Friday afternoon. Take care, stay safe, free Palestine, all the good stuff. Enjoy Kevin Logan. Make sure you subscribe on my end. Please subscribe with Amazon Prime. It's free. Super chat and drop membership gifts and all that kind of malarkey over on YouTube as well. And if you can afford to, I would implore you to, if you can, support on Patreon at patreon.com/NoJusticeMTG to help me pay my bills, because I like paying bills, if you can do. Never expected, always appreciated. Please help support the channel. Otherwise, take care.